When my son passed away, my daughter-in-law laughed. Now you're all alone. She didn't know Richard left me a secret she could never touch. Those 4 words cut through the silence of my son's funeral like a blade. My daughter-in-law's voice carried a laugh hidden behind them. A laugh so cruel it almost drowned out the sound of shovels covering his coffin with earth. I turned to her, stunned, my body trembling from grief and disbelief. She didn't even flinch. Her lips curved in a smirk, her eyes dry and sharp, as if my pain was the final prize she had waited for. In that moment, the weight of my loss crushed me, yet her words stabbed deeper than death itself. The mourners around us didn't notice. Neighbors bowed their heads, whispering prayers, never guessing the venom whispered into my ear. To them, she was a grieving widow. To me, she revealed her true face, one that had been waiting for the moment when I would stand powerless and broken. I clutched the handkerchief Richard once pressed into my palm on our wedding day. He had promised me then that I'd never walk through life alone. Even now, though his voice was gone from this world, I knew he hadn't abandoned me. He had left behind a secret, one my daughter-in-law could never touch. She thought she had stripped me of everything. She thought she had finally won. But Richard's secret was still waiting, and when the time came, it would turn her smile into silence. She never saw it coming. I should tell you about my life before that cruel laugh, before the funeral silence was pierced by words that will never leave me. My home once had warmth. Richard and I were not rich, but we were steady. He worked with his hands, fixing what broke, humming the same tune he had since his youth. I kept the kitchen alive, filling it with scents of bread, stews, spices passed down through my mother. And our son, our only child, was the bridge between us. Quiet, thoughtful, never raising his voice, he was the best parts of us both. When he first introduced her, I thought she was a gift. She stepped into our house with a gentle smile, her hands folded in front of her like a schoolgirl. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mom," she said, calling me that from the first day. I wanted to believe her. My son's eyes glowed when he looked at her. And what mother doesn't want her child to be happy? At first, she played the role well. She helped me carry dishes to the table, offered to fold laundry while humming songs I didn't know. The neighbors called her sweet, thoughtful, even graceful. I thought perhaps I had been given not just a daughter-in-law but a daughter of my own. But smiles can be masks, and masks crack. The cracks showed in whispers, in sideways glances. I remember one evening stirring a pot of stew, the kind my son had loved since he was a boy. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Why do you always cook such heavy meals?" she asked, her nose wrinkled. "We're not living in the old days anymore." I laughed softly. "This is what your husband grew up on. He loves this dish." Her lips curled into something sharp. "Maybe he should grow up. Stop needing his mommy." The spoon trembled in my hand. My son walked in at that moment, glancing between us. When I told him what she had said, he gave me that helpless look, the one that begged, "Please, don't fight." Not tonight. So I swallowed my anger. But silence can be dangerous. It was dangerous the day I found a folded bank statement hidden between couch cushions. Her name on top. A transfer from my son's account, larger than anything I imagined him giving. My pulse quickened as I carried it to the dinner table. She glanced at it once, then smirked. "So you snoop through our things now?" My son flushed, grabbed the paper. "Mom, please. Don't make a big deal out of this." Don't make a big deal?" My voice cracked. "It's your account, do you even know?" "It's our money," she interrupted smoothly, her eyes gleaming. "Not yours." The way she said "our" felt like the walls of my home closing in. After that, she placed herself like a wall between us. Whenever I tried to speak to my son alone, she appeared. If I asked him to help with something, she answered for him. Once, I needed help moving a box from the attic. "Can you lend me your strength for a moment?" I asked. Before he could reply, she laughed. "He doesn't have time for that. We have real plans." He avoided my eyes, and I knew. Each silence was another brick in the wall she built between us. At night, I heard their voices through thin walls. His, weary, hers, sharp. I could never catch every word, but enough to know she was pushing him further from me. The breaking point came on a Sunday dinner. I set the table with Richard's mother's quilted runner, roasted chicken, candles lit. I wanted peace, a memory of family. As we sat down, she reached across, plucked the runner, and tossed it aside. "This old thing makes everything look cheap," she said. My breath caught. That runner had been in our family for decades. My son shifted, eyes on his plate. He said nothing. His silence hurt more than her insult. By the end of that meal, I felt like a guest in my own house. Then came the sickness. My son fell ill so suddenly it knocked the ground from under me. The doctors spoke in clipped tones. "Aggressive, little hope, prepare yourselves." I sat by his hospital bed, holding his hand, whispering prayers. Machines beeped steadily, each sound like a countdown. She came and went, her face unreadable, her voice brisk as if she were completing paperwork. One night, as I stroked his hair, he whispered, "Mom, don't fight with her. Please. I just want peace." "Oh?" Tears blurred my vision. "I'll do anything for you, my love." Within weeks, he was gone. At the funeral, I thought my grief had reached its limit. But grief has no bottom, no floor to crash against. I stood by the grave, clutching Richard's old handkerchief, my body hollowed out. And then, she leaned close, her breath brushing my ear. "Now you're all alone," she whispered, with a laugh so soft, yet so cruel it pierced deeper than the loss itself. No tears in her eyes, no tremor in her voice, only triumph, as though my suffering was the prize she'd been waiting for. The mourners didn't notice. They prayed, they wept, never guessing what venom had just been whispered. But she was wrong. Richard had not left me alone. He had left me something she could never touch. And soon enough, she would discover the cost of mocking a woman who still carried his secret. Grief has a strange way of distorting time. After the funeral, days melted into one another, a blur of silent mornings and sleepless nights. But I remember with crystal clarity the first evening I returned home to find the locks had been changed. I stood on the porch, trembling hands clutching my keys, jamming them into the door again and again, the metal scraping uselessly. Panic crawled up my throat. Finally, the door swung open not by my hand but by hers. She leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Oh," she said, feigning surprise. "I had the locks replaced. For security, of course. Can't be too careful." I pushed past her, my voice shaking. "This is my house. Richard built this house. You had no right." Her laugh followed me down the hallway. "Correction. Our house. And as the widow, I think my rights come first." I wanted to scream, but my voice cracked into silence. For the first time in decades, I felt like an intruder in my own home. The neighbors noticed. Word travels fast on quiet streets. They whispered behind their curtains, speculating how long before I was moved out. Some offered me pitying glances. Others avoided my eyes altogether. In their minds, I had already been stripped of everything: my son, my authority, my place. I tried to hold my head high, but every corner of the house carried her shadow. She had rearranged the living room, moving Richard's recliner into storage. Family photos disappeared, replaced by glossy prints of landscapes with no history. When I asked where the photographs were, she waved a dismissive hand. "They were clutter. This place needs a fresh start." I pressed my lips together so tightly they hurt. Richard's smile had been in those frames. My son's graduation portrait, my parents' wedding photo, all swept aside like garbage. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty wall, and wondered how much more I could endure. The cruelty didn't stop at objects. She targeted me directly. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find my dinner plate missing. She had set 2 plates on the table, one for herself, one for a visiting friend, but nothing for me. "Did you forget someone?" I asked quietly. She looked me in the eye and said, "If you want to eat, make your own. I'm not your maid." And one. Her friend laughed. My cheeks burned, but I refused to cry. I retreated to my room, clutching the quilt Richard's mother had sewn. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, like the past itself. I lay awake, wondering how quickly grief could turn into humiliation, and how easily humiliation could turn into despair. But despair has a way of revealing things you've overlooked. One afternoon, while dusting Richard's old bookshelf in the study, I noticed a volume that sat slightly askew. It was a thick history book he had loved, its spine worn, its corners bent. When I pulled it out, a slip of paper fluttered to the floor. My breath caught as I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably his slanted, firm, written in blue ink. "If anything happens, check the cabinet behind the study desk." My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the note. I pressed it to my chest, whispering his name. Richard. He had left me something. A message, a breadcrumb, a lifeline. Just as hope bloomed in my chest, I heard footsteps behind me. "What's that?" her voice snapped. I turned, too slowly. She was standing in the doorway, eyes narrowed. "Nothing," I said quickly, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. Her gaze lingered, sharp and probing, before she stepped forward and yanked the book from my hand. "You don't need these old things," she sneered. I forced a weak smile, clutching the pocket where Richard's note burned like fire. That night, I couldn't sleep. The memory of her suspicion gnawed at me. Had she seen the paper? Had she guessed? I lay in the dark, clutching the quilt, my heart racing. The next morning, I gathered courage. I waited until she left for errands, then crept into the study. I pushed the desk away from the wall, dust rising around me. My fingers brushed the cabinet Richard had built years ago. My pulse pounded in my ears. I reached for the small latch hidden at the back. It clicked open. But before I could see inside, I heard the front door slam. Her voice echoed through the hallway. "I know you're in there." My body froze, half crouched, hand on the cabinet. My throat went dry. Her footsteps grew louder, heels clicking against the hardwood floor, each one slicing through my nerves. I pushed the desk back into place as quickly and quietly as I could, but the old wood groaned. My breath caught. She appeared in the doorway, eyes scanning the room. "What are you doing in here?" I straightened my back, forcing a calm I did not feel. "Dusting. This room hasn't been touched in weeks." Her gaze drifted to the desk, lingered on the stack of books slightly out of line. For a terrible moment, I thought she'd seen the note tucked safely in my pocket. Then, just as suddenly, she shrugged. "Don't waste your time. This house needs a fresh start, not relics of the dead." With that, she turned and walked away. But her words chilled me, because I knew what she meant. Richard's things, my son's things, even my presence, were relics in her eyes. She wouldn't rest until she erased us all. That night, I dreamed of Richard. He stood at the foot of our bed, his hands clasped behind his back, watching me with that quiet patience I had loved all our years together. "Don't let her win," he said. "I left you more than memories." I woke in the dark, the quilt tangled around me, my chest heaving. His words stayed in my ears like an echo. When dawn came, I moved through the house with renewed determination. If Richard had hidden something, I would find it. The days that followed were filled with little torments from her. She invited friends over, young women with sharp laughter and sharper tongues. They sat in the living room, sipping wine from glasses that once belonged to Richard's parents. "She just sits around all day," I heard her tell them, not bothering to lower her voice. "Like a ghost haunting this place." Laughter erupted, high and cruel. My cheeks burned, but I refused to leave my room. I knew if I confronted her then, she'd twist it into proof that I was bitter and unstable. Still, their laughter fueled me. If I had ever doubted Richard had left me something, I didn't now. He must have known this day would come. A storm rolled in one evening, lightning cracking across the sky. Rain battered the windows as I sat alone in my room, the house vibrating with each thunderclap. I heard a faint knock, soft at first, then more insistent. When I opened the door, my son's old friend Michael stood there, soaked through. He looked at me with sorrow. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes. I should have come sooner." I led him inside, gave him a towel. His hands shook as he spoke. "At the hospital, before your son passed, he told me something. He said, 'Take care of my mom. Don't let her push her out.'" Tears welled in my eyes. "He knew," I whispered. Michael nodded. "He didn't trust her. He tried to talk to me about it, But he didn't want to upset you. Hearing those words shattered me anew, but it also steeled my resolve. My boy had seen the truth before I could admit it. He wanted me to fight. The next morning, I waited until she left again, then returned to the study. My hands trembled as I pushed the desk aside once more. The latch gave way, and the cabinet creaked open. Inside was a wooden box, worn smooth from Richard's touch. I lifted it out, heart pounding. Just as I set it on the desk, the front door slammed again. My stomach dropped. She was home early. I shoved the box back into the cabinet, snapped it shut, and pulled the desk into place. My fingers ached from the effort. I grabbed the nearest book, pretending to read, as her footsteps stormed down the hall. She appeared in the doorway again, eyes narrowed. "You're always in here," she said. "What are you hiding?" I lifted the book. "Memories, something you'll never understand." Her lips curled. She crossed the room, leaned close to my face, and whispered, "You don't belong here anymore. Sooner or later, you'll leave. I'll make sure of it." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the air heavy with her promise. That night, I sat awake, the note in my hand. "If anything happens, check the cabinet behind the study desk." Richard's words burned into me. I had seen the box. I had touched it. Whatever was inside was meant for me. But how would I open it without her watching every move? The storm outside had passed, but another storm brewed inside me. For the first time since my son's death, I felt something other than grief. I felt fire. She thought I was broken. She thought I was powerless. But she had no idea Richard was still guiding me, even from beyond the grave, and she would never see it coming. The next few days blurred together, a test of nerves and patience. She hovered everywhere, her footsteps echoing through the halls like a warning bell. I couldn't make a move without feeling her eyes on me. But the memory of the wooden box hidden behind the desk burned in my mind. I knew it was the key, Richard's parting gift, his way of keeping me safe. I needed a plan. One evening, I excused myself after dinner, retreating to my room. I opened the drawer of my nightstand where I kept Richard's old watch. Its ticking had long stopped, but I wound it anyway, listening to the silence. I spoke into the quiet, as if he could hear me. "Help me. Tell me what to do." The answer came not in a voice, but in a memory. Richard once told me, "She's clever but careless when she feels she's already won." I realized then, if I wanted a chance, I had to let her believe she had already crushed me. The very next day, she invited more guests over, distant cousins, neighbors, even a friend of hers who always looked me up and down like I was something to be pitied. She opened bottles of wine, arranged snacks on the very plates that had belonged to Richard's grandmother. When I tried to sit with them, she blocked the chair. "This space is full," she said loudly, her smile razor-sharp. The guests shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke up. So I nodded, bowed my head, and walked away without protest. From the corner of my eye, I saw her smirk. She thought she had humiliated me into silence. That was what I needed. Later that night, when the house was finally quiet, I crept back to the study. My heart hammered as I pushed the desk aside for the third time. I knelt, fingers fumbling with the latch, until it clicked open. The wooden box sat waiting, patient, as though it had been holding its breath all this time. I pulled it out, cradling it in my lap. The wood smelled faintly of cedar, a scent that yanked me back to our early years together, when Richard had built the shelves in this very room. My hands shook as I opened the lid. Inside, neatly folded, was a set of documents sealed in a plastic sleeve. On top of them lay a flash drive. And beneath that, a letter, my name written across the envelope in Richard's familiar handwriting. Tears blurred my vision. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I pressed the letter to my lips, whispering, "Thank you." I was about to read when the floorboard creaked. She was there. Her silhouette filled the doorway, her arms crossed, lips curled into a smile that told me she had been watching. "I knew it," she hissed. "I knew you were hiding something." I scrambled to my feet, clutching the box to my chest. "This belongs to me." She laughed, a sound cold and victorious. "Nothing in this house belongs to you. Not anymore." She stepped closer, her eyes darting to the documents. "Give it to me." I backed away, every muscle trembling. For a moment, I thought she might lunge, tear the box from my arms. But then she paused, calculating. She tilted her head and said, "Go ahead. Read whatever pathetic note he left you. It won't change a thing. I already have this house, this life. You're just a shadow." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her laughter trailing down the hall. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Richard never did anything halfway. If he had left me this, it wasn't worthless. It was a weapon. I sat back down, my hands trembling as I opened the envelope. The letter was short, but every word carried his voice. "My love, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I know her ways. I know she will try to strip you of everything, but I made sure you will never be at her mercy. In this box are the documents you'll need. Take them to James, our lawyer. He knows what to do. Don't be afraid. She cannot touch what I have left you." I pressed the paper to my chest, sobbing silently, the storm of grief mixing with a surge of strength. Richard had seen this coming. He had trusted me to carry out the fight. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't drowning. The next morning, I hid the box beneath my quilt, rising early before she stirred. I dressed, clutching my purse like a lifeline, and slipped out of the house. The air was crisp, heavy with dew. Every step to James's office felt like walking into the future Richard had prepared. When James saw me at the door, his eyes softened. "He told me you'd come one day," he said quietly. I handed him the documents with trembling hands. He left this for me." James opened the folder, scanning each page. Then he looked up, his expression shifting from sympathy to certainty. "You have nothing to fear. She has no legal claim to the house or Richard's accounts. Everything is yours." I nearly collapsed with relief. For weeks I had felt powerless, stripped of everything. But now, the ground beneath me steadied. Richard had kept his promise. I returned home that afternoon, carrying not just the weight of the box, but the weight of new knowledge. She greeted me in the hallway with that same mocking smile. "Well?" she asked. "Did you have fun wandering around like a lost ghost?" I met her eyes for the first time in weeks and didn't look away. "You'll see soon enough," I said. Her smirk faltered, just slightly. For the first time since my son's death, I felt the scales begin to tip. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room with Richard's letter spread across my lap, the words lit by a single lamp. I read it again and again, until the ink seemed burned into my memory. "Don't be afraid. She cannot touch what I have left you." The next morning I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Purpose. While she busied herself rearranging the living room, her latest project of erasing every trace of Richard, I slipped out with the folder tucked deep into my purse. James greeted me in his office with the same calm steadiness Richard had always admired. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Instead, he laid the documents out across his desk and explained what they meant in words both sharp and soothing. "Richard changed his will 2 years ago," James said, tapping the papers. "He left the house, the savings, and his retirement account entirely to you. Your daughter-in-law has no claim, not legally, not financially." I gripped the arms of the chair. "But she acts like it's all hers. She changed the locks. My voice broke. James leaned forward. "That's intimidation. She's counting on your grief to silence you. But she has nothing. If she tries to throw you out, the law will be on your side. And with this," he tapped the flash drive, "we have even more." I frowned. "What's on it?" He smiled faintly. "Let's find out." He plugged the flash drive into his computer. A single audio file appeared. James clicked play. And then, oh God, Richard's voice filled the room. "If you are listening, it means I am gone. And if she's still there, it means she's already tried to take everything. Don't let her. This house, our savings, they belong to you." I made sure she could never touch them. "Stand tall, my love. You are stronger than she knows." My hand flew to my mouth. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Hearing his voice again steady, protective, filled with the love I thought I'd lost forever, it was almost too much. James's eyes softened. "He prepared this for you, and if necessary, we can present this as evidence of his intent. It will silence any doubts in court." For the first time since the funeral, I felt my spine straighten. I wasn't powerless. Richard had armed me with truth, with proof, with love that stretched beyond death. But courage is one thing in an office with a lawyer. It's another back in the house where she lurked, waiting like a predator. When I returned, she was in the kitchen, sipping coffee as though she owned the place. Her eyes flicked to the purse on my arm. "Out running errands?" she asked casually. I forced my expression into neutrality. "Groceries?" She smirked. "Don't waste money. You won't be here much longer." Her confidence might have rattled me once, but now, I felt Richard's voice in my ears. "Stand tall." "I wouldn't be so sure," I murmured, brushing past her. For the first time, it was her who turned to watch me go, suspicion etched into her features. The days that followed were a test of nerves. I hid the documents beneath the quilt in my room, sleeping with one hand on them. She prowled the house, watching me closely, as though she sensed something had shifted. And she was right. Something had. I began to prepare, quietly, carefully. James suggested I wait until the right moment, until there were witnesses who couldn't deny what they heard and saw. "You need a stage," he said. "A gathering where she will try to claim everything. That's when you reveal the truth." The thought terrified me, but it also thrilled me. The idea of turning her own arrogance against her, it was exactly what Richard would have wanted. Then came my chance. She announced one morning, her voice dripping with pride, that she was hosting a family dinner. She called relatives, invited neighbors, made a spectacle of planning. "This house deserves a new beginning," she told me, arranging flowers at the dining table. "And I want everyone to see it." I stood in the doorway, watching her, my pulse quickening. A gathering, an audience, witnesses. Exactly what James had said I needed. She glanced at me, her smile thin and mocking. "Of course, you'll be there too. I wouldn't want anyone to think I threw you out yet." I forced a small smile. I wouldn't miss it. Inside, my heart thundered. This was it, the moment Richard had prepared me for. That night, I sat alone in my room. The flash drive and documents spread before me. I practiced what I would say, whispered words into the stillness. I imagined her face when the truth was revealed. Imagined the gasps of the guests, the shift of power. Fear gnawed at me, but beneath it was steel. She thought I was broken, a widow too weak to fight. She thought she had already won. But Richard had left me more than a will. He had left me the strength to finish the battle he could not fight himself. And at that dinner, everyone would finally see the truth. The days leading up to her family dinner crawled by with unbearable slowness. She flitted through the house like a queen preparing her coronation, ordering new tablecloths, polishing silverware, moving furniture just to make it feel more hers. Each act was another attempt to erase Richard's presence, to bury the home we had built together beneath her vanity. I stayed quiet, watching, biding my time. But inside, a current of resolve grew stronger. Every vase she rearranged, every picture frame she tossed into storage only reminded me of the folder hidden beneath my quilt, of Richard's voice echoing in my memory. "Stand tall. You are stronger than she knows." The night before the gathering, I received a call from James. His voice was calm but firm. "Are you ready?" "I don't know if ready is the right word," I admitted, clutching the phone tightly. "But I have no choice." "You're not alone," he reassured me. "I'll be there. Bring the documents and the drive. When the time is right, we'll show everyone." Hearing those words settled something inside me. For weeks I had felt as if the world was crumbling under her laughter. Now, finally, I had a partner. On the morning of the dinner, I woke early. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy dress Richard had always said brought out my strength. I pinned my hair back, smoothing every strand, and when I looked in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. I did not look like a broken widow anymore. I looked like a woman ready for battle. Downstairs, the house buzzed with her activity. She had commanded caterers to deliver food, as though she could impress our relatives with store-bought extravagance. I watched her bustle about, giving orders with a sharp tongue. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she tilted her head and smiled. "Don't you look fancy?" she mocked. "Trying to remind people you're still relevant?" I met her gaze steadily. "I don't need to remind anyone. They already know." Her smile faltered, just slightly, before she turned back to the table settings. By evening, the house filled with voices. Relatives I hadn't seen in months arrived, their expressions awkward as they greeted me. Some whispered condolences, others avoided the subject entirely, their eyes darting between me and her. Neighbors trickled in, carrying bottles of wine, murmuring admiration at how beautiful the house looked. She basked in it all, soaking in their praise, guiding them to the dining room as though she were the true matriarch. "This is a new beginning," she announced brightly. "My husband may be gone, but this house will carry on through me." I stood near the back, clutching my purse where the documents and flash drive rested. James caught my eye from across the room, giving me a small nod. The moment was coming. Dinner began with forced laughter and clinking glasses. She sat at the head of the table, my son's place, her posture proud. She toasted herself, thanked everyone for coming, spoke of the future she planned to build in her home. Each word dripped with arrogance. Each smile was a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I let her speak. I let her shine. I let her dig her own grave with every boastful sentence. Finally, she raised her glass and said loudly, "This house, this life, it's mine now. And nothing, no one, can take it from me." The room fell into hushed silence. Guests glanced at one another, uncomfortable. It was the perfect opening. I rose slowly from my chair. My heart pounded so fiercely I thought the whole room could hear it. But Richard's voice steadied me. "Stand tall." "You're wrong," I said, my voice clear. "This house isn't yours. It was never yours." Ender. Gasps rippled around the table. She turned to me, eyes blazing. "Excuse me?" I reached into my purse and drew out the folder. Richard made sure of it. He left everything to me. Her laugh rang out, sharp and mocking. "Oh, please, don't embarrass yourself. Everyone knows widows inherit everything. That's how it works." James stood then, his presence commanding the room. "Not this time," he said firmly. He opened the folder, laying the documents flat on the table for all to see. Richard revised his will. Every asset, every account, the deed to this house all left to his wife, not his sons. The room erupted in murmurs. Relatives craned their necks. Neighbors whispered furiously. She went pale, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. "You're lying," she spat, her voice trembling. "This is forged. It has to be." James didn't flinch. He reached into his briefcase and produced a small speaker. "Richard anticipated that claim," he said. He pressed a button. And then, Richard's voice filled the room. "If you are hearing this, I am gone. I leave everything to my wife. No one else has any claim. I want her protected. Remember this, she is not alone." The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye turned toward her, and in that instant, she was stripped bare. Not the grieving widow, not the triumphant victor, but a liar exposed before them all. Her lips trembled, but no words came. For once, she had nothing to say. I sat down slowly, my hands steady. For the first time in months, the weight on my chest lifted. Richard's secret had spoken for me, louder than I ever could. The battle wasn't over, not yet, but the tide had turned. The room had fallen into stunned silence. For once, every mocking word, every smirk she had used to belittle me, vanished into the stillness. My daughter-in-law stood frozen, her face pale, her glass shards glittering at her feet. Relatives shifted in their chairs, whispering. Neighbors exchanged wide-eyed glances. Richard's voice still lingered in the air, as if he were there, standing beside me. "She is not alone." She snapped out of her shock with a sudden shriek. "This is a trick. She's manipulating all of you." She pointed at me with trembling fingers, her composure unraveling. "You think this changes anything? I lived here. I was his wife. It's mine by right." James's voice cut through her rant like a blade. "The law doesn't bend to arrogance. The will is valid. The accounts are sealed under her name, and Richard's statement leaves no room for doubt." Guests began to murmur more loudly. An aunt of mine gasped, covering her mouth. One of the neighbors leaned to another and whispered, "So she's been lying this whole time." I kept my eyes on her, steady for the first time in months. "You told me I was all alone," I said softly, my words carrying in the hushed room. But Richard never abandoned me. He made sure I'd never be at your mercy. Her face twisted, torn between fury and fear. But she wasn't ready to give up her performance. She slammed her hands on the table. Do you people really think a few papers and a recording prove anything? She probably forced Richard into this. Look at her pathetic, bitter, clinging to control she doesn't deserve. For a moment, I feared her words might sway them. Some guests glanced uncertainly between us. She seized on their hesitation. You've all seen how she clings to the past, she continued. She can't let go. She can't move on. And now she's trying to steal everything that should have been mine. I opened my mouth to speak, but James lifted a hand. Enough. His tone was sharp, final. He pulled another sheet from the folder. Here are bank statements showing Richard transferred all assets to his wife months before his passing. Signatures notarized, legally binding. Do you want to claim that's forged too? The color drained from her cheeks. She sputtered, but no sound came. The silence was broken by Michael, my son's old friend, who had been quietly seated near the back. He stood suddenly, his voice steady. I visited him in the hospital. He told me himself he didn't trust her. He said, "Take care of my mom. Don't let her push her out." Gasps rippled again through the room. My heart lurched, gratitude flooding me. Now the tide shifted completely. Relatives nodded, some glaring at her openly. Neighbors whispered, their pity now replaced by disapproval. She looked around, realizing no one was on her side. You're all fools, she hissed. She manipulated him, and now she's manipulated you. No, I said firmly. My voice no longer shook. You did that to yourself. Her mask cracked further. She began pacing, her hands trembling. You can't do this to me. I gave years of my life to this family. I sacrificed for him, for all of you, and now you're turning against me? Her words fell flat. Even the relatives who had once tolerated her cruelty avoided her gaze. Her desperation filled the air like smoke, suffocating and bitter. James gathered the documents neatly. This isn't a debate. The law is settled. If you contest it, you'll only humiliate yourself further. For the first time, I saw true fear flicker in her eyes. But she wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. She turned to me, voice dropping into a venomous whisper, though everyone could still hear. You think you've won? You think a few scraps of paper and a recording mean you've beaten me? She leaned closer, her words laced with fury. This isn't over. I'll make sure you regret humiliating me. I met her glare without flinching. I've already lived through the worst loss a mother can endure. There is nothing you can do to me now. Her lips parted, but no words came. She pulled back as if struck. James placed a hand on my shoulder. It's enough for tonight. You've made your case. Everyone here has seen and heard the truth. I nodded, though my heart still pounded. The night wasn't finished. Not yet. She might lash out again, and I had to be ready. As the guests rose, murmuring amongst themselves, I caught sight of her standing rigid at the far end of the room, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. She had lost the crowd, lost the law, lost her power. But I could feel it in the air she wasn't going down quietly. And that meant Richard's secret might not be the final twist after all. The dining room emptied slowly, the air thick with whispers. Guests excused themselves with awkward nods, some patting my shoulder in silent support, others glaring at her as they passed. By the time the last relative closed the front door behind them, only she, James, Michael, and I remained. The silence was unbearable. She stood at the far end of the table, her body rigid, her eyes burning into me as though she could set me alight with sheer hatred. Finally, she laughed, a brittle, high-pitched sound that broke the tension like shattered glass. Well, she said, her voice sharp, you certainly put on quite a performance. I'll admit, I didn't think you had it in you. James gathered his papers calmly. This wasn't theater. It was the truth. Everyone who matters has now seen it. Her eyes snapped to him. Truth? Don't talk to me about truth. You lawyers twist words to suit whoever pays you. Michael stepped forward, his voice steady. I heard it from him myself. Richard didn't trust you. He wanted his mother protected. You can't twist that. Her face darkened, her mask slipping further. You're all against me, she spat. Every single one of you. But you'll regret this. Mark my words. I held my ground, though my knees trembled beneath my dress. For months, she had eroded my confidence, convincing me I was powerless. But not tonight. Not anymore. You lost, I said softly, though my words cut sharp. Richard's voice spoke louder than your cruelty ever could. Is fact. She slammed her fist on the table, making the silverware rattle. Don't you dare act like some saint. You think you're righteous because of a few documents? Because your husband thought pitying you in death would give you power? Her words were venom, but for the first time they slid off me like water. I had already faced the deepest wound, the loss of my son. Compared to that, her rage was nothing but noise. James stepped closer, his presence steady. I suggest you start packing your things. The law is on her side. If you try to resist, it won't end well for you. She froze, her breath coming fast and shallow. Then, with a sudden shriek, she swept her arm across the table, sending glasses and plates crashing to the floor. Shards scattered everywhere, reflecting the overhead light like jagged stars. You won't take this from me, she screamed. This house, this life, it was supposed to be mine. Do you hear me? Mine. Ender. Michael rushed forward, grabbing her wrist before she could hurl another glass. That's enough, he said firmly. Her chest heaved, her hair falling loose around her face. For a moment, she looked less like the triumphant widow she had pretended to be, and more like a cornered animal. I bent down, carefully picking up one of the fallen pieces of china. It was from Richard's mother's collection, one she had mocked as cheap and old, a fragment of our past, broken under her rage. I straightened, holding the shard in my hand. You tried to destroy everything that mattered to us. But Richard was smarter than you. He knew your greed. He planned for it. And tonight, everyone saw who you really are. Her eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before, not anger, not arrogance, but fear. For once, she realized she had no weapons left. James cleared his throat. I'll arrange the legal filings tomorrow. She'll have 30 days to vacate the property. If she refuses, we'll pursue eviction through the courts. She turned on him, snarling. You think you can just erase me? I was his wife. And now, James replied calmly, you're just a guest, one without a welcome. Michael released her wrist, but kept a wary distance, ready should she lash out again. I placed the shard of china gently on the table. You told me I was all alone, I said quietly, but tonight proved the opposite. I have Richard's words, his will, the law, and people who still stand beside me. You have nothing. Her lips quivered. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. At last, she let out a low, trembling laugh. Fine, she muttered. Fine. Enjoy your little victory. But don't think this is the end. You'll regret humiliating me in front of everyone. She spun on her heel and stormed out of the room, the sound of her footsteps echoing up the stairs until a door slammed shut. The house finally fell quiet. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My body sagged, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. James placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You did well tonight. Better than you know. Michael nodded, his eyes kind. Your son would be proud. Tears stung my eyes, but they were different this time, not tears of despair, but of release. For the first time since the funeral, I felt Richard's presence not as a ghost of loss, but as a shield, standing with me even now. As the clock ticked past midnight, I sat alone in the dining room, the documents safe once more in my purse. The shattered glass had been swept aside. The guests had gone, but the echoes of the evening still lingered. I had faced her wrath. I had revealed Richard's secret. I had stood tall. But even as I savored the victory, I knew one thing with certainty. She would not surrender easily. Her pride, her greed, her fury, they would not let her go quietly. And that meant the final confrontation was still waiting. The house was still the next morning, as though holding its breath after the storm of the night before. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the shards of broken pride she had left behind. I moved quietly, gathering the last of the china fragments into a box. Each piece was sharp, jagged, dangerous like her words, like her presence. I heard the creak of footsteps above. She had locked herself in the guest room after the gathering, but now she descended slowly, eyes swollen from rage or sleeplessness. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You think last night meant anything?" she said bitterly. "So they clapped for you," nodded their heads. "People forget. People move on. And when they do, it'll be me standing here, not you." I set the box of broken china on the counter and faced her. My voice was steady. "You're wrong. Last night wasn't for applause. It was the truth. And the truth doesn't fade." Her mouth tightened into a grim line, but she said nothing. Later that day, James returned with more papers. He laid them out on the kitchen table while she hovered nearby, arms crossed, glaring daggers. "This," James said, sliding a document toward me, "is the deed, transferred solely to your name. This," he tapped another page, "is the court notice confirming her lack of claim. You are the sole owner. Legally, irrevocably." She slammed her hand on the table. "This is outrageous." "No," James replied calmly. "This is final." Her hands trembled as she tried to grab the papers, but James placed his palm firmly over them. "Touch these, and I'll have you removed. I suggest you start planning where you'll go once the 30-day notice is served." The color drained from her face. That night, she made one final attempt to break me. I found her in the living room, sitting in Richard's recliner, the one she had once hidden away. She turned slowly, her eyes gleaming with venom. "You may have fooled them with papers and recordings, but you'll never erase me. This was my life too." I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "You erased yourself the moment you laughed at my son's funeral, the moment you told me I was all alone." She flinched, just slightly. For the first time, shame flickered across her face, but it was drowned quickly by bitterness. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "You'll regret ever crossing me." I shook my head. "Number, I've already lived through the greatest regret a mother can endure. There's nothing you can do that compares." She had no answer. In the weeks that followed, the house shifted back toward peace. Relatives called more often. Neighbors visited with baked bread and warm embraces. For once, the sympathy in their eyes wasn't mixed with doubt. They had seen her unveiled, and me restored. She sulked in the guest room, her boxes slowly filling with clothes and trinkets. The sound of packing tape was the sweetest music I had heard in months. On her final day, she dragged her suitcases down the stairs, her face pinched with bitterness. She paused at the doorway, glancing back at me. "You won't win in the end," she said coldly. "People like you always end up alone." I met her eyes with a quiet strength Richard had left me. "Alone? Number Richard is still here. My son is still with me. Their love is stronger than your cruelty ever was." For a moment, her composure faltered. Then she turned, slammed the door behind her, and was gone. The house was mine again, not just in name but in spirit. I walked through each room, restoring Richard's chair, rehanging the photographs, unfolding the quilt across the dining table. Each act was a reclamation, a reminder that love endures even when lives do not. As I stood in the study, gazing at the cabinet where Richard had hidden the box, I whispered, "Thank you." The room was silent, but I felt him there, steady as ever, standing with me. She had told me I was all alone. She had smirked at my grief, mocked my loss, tried to strip me of everything. But she never saw Richard's secret. She never understood his strength or mine. And in the end, it was her isolation, not mine, that echoed loudest when the door closed behind her. The house was quiet again. For the first time in months, silence no longer felt like a weapon, but like a balm. I wandered from room to room, letting my hands rest on the walls Richard once painted, the furniture we'd chosen together, the photographs that now returned to their rightful places. The home breathed again, as though exhaling the poison she had left behind. When she was gone, the neighbors noticed. They waved when I stepped onto the porch. Some stopped by with pies and casseroles, the way people do when they sense a home is mending. "You look stronger," one of them said softly, and I realized she was right. I did feel stronger, though, not because the battle was over, but because I had survived it. I sat at the kitchen table one evening, the documents spread neatly before me. Proof. Evidence. Weapons Richard had prepared so carefully. I ran my fingers over his handwriting on the letter. hearing his voice in every word. You are stronger than she knows. He was right. I had doubted myself, buried under grief, under her cruelty, under the suffocating belief that I was powerless. But the truth was, I had endured the worst a mother could face. Losing my son had nearly ended me, but surviving it made me unshakable. Word spread quickly through the family. Cousins called, aunts visited, even distant relatives sent letters. They told me how proud Richard would have been, how brave I had been to stand up to her. Some admitted, shamefaced, that they had believed her at first, that they thought I really had been left with nothing, but the dinner had opened their eyes. She fooled us, one of them confessed. But you showed us the truth. I nodded, though my heart ached. It hadn't been about proving anything to them. It had been about keeping Richard's promise, about not letting her erase the life we built. Still, their support wrapped around me like a cloak I hadn't realized I needed. As for her, she vanished from our lives as quickly as she had entered them. Whispers reached me of her bitterness, of how she complained to anyone who would listen that she had been cheated. But the law was ironclad, and Richard's words were unshakable. She could rage, but she could not undo what he had built for me. Sometimes, when the house is especially still, I imagine I can still hear her mocking laugh. But then I hear Richard's steadier voice in my memory, drowning it out. She had tried to convince me I was alone, but I never truly was. One evening, Michael came by. He sat at the kitchen table, the same place he'd sat with my son so many times, and told me, "He asked me to look after you. I'll keep that promise." Tears filled my eyes. He knew I would need someone. Michael nodded. He knew you were strong, but even strong people deserve to have others stand beside them. I smiled through my tears, grateful for the loyalty of a boy who had grown into a man my son had trusted. Perhaps, in some small way, I was not only keeping Richard's legacy alive, but my son's as well. Life will never return to what it was before. Grief is not something you erase. It lingers, woven into the fabric of each day. I still wake some mornings expecting to hear my son's footsteps, to see Richard's smile across the breakfast table. But when the ache threatens to consume me, I remind myself, they are still here, in the memories, in the love, in the strength they left behind. And when I walk through this house, no longer haunted by her cruelty, I feel them both. She had said I was all alone, but Richard had left me more than secrets and documents. He had left me his voice, his love, his protection, and my son, even in his last days, had left me his trust. I am not alone. I never was. To anyone listening, to anyone who has ever been told they are powerless, I say this: you are stronger than they know. Never let cruelty convince you otherwise. Richard prepared the way for me, but it was my choice to walk it. And in walking it, I discovered something I had forgotten, that I can stand tall, even when the storm rages. So, yes, she thought she had won. She laughed at my grief, mocked my loss, tried to strip me bare. But she never saw Richard's secret. She never saw the strength she awoke in me. She never saw it coming. If you've ever faced someone who thought they could break you, tell me in the comments what gave you strength. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story on my family revenge stories. Another tale of secrets, betrayals, and justice is waiting for you.